Jose Zuniga is a multifaceted artist known for his vibrant and evocative works that explore the interplay of culture, identity, and emotion. Born in California to Mexican parents, Zuniga navigates the complexities of belonging, often feeling caught between two worlds. In Mexico, he's labeled a gringo, while in the US, he's sometimes seen as an outsider, a Mexican. This struggle shapes his artistry as he seamlessly blends traditional techniques with contemporary themes to reflect this personal narrative. Through exhibitions and collaborations, Zuniga invites viewers to engage in meaningful dialogue about identity and belonging, making him a compelling figure in the art world. Creating a complex cocktail for an artist like Jose Zuniga is a fitting tribute to his identity and artistic vision. We named it El Viajero, combining bourbon, which started with rebellion against being taxed on whiskey and became America's only native spirit. No whiskey made outside of the US can be labeled or described as bourbon. Mezcal, a distilled alcoholic drink made from agave, originated in Mexico, where it is the national spirit. So I brought these two things together to represent who he is. Just as Zuniga's art blends and explores the intricacies of culture and belonging, the lemon juice creates a brightness, the organic maple syrup embodies layers of flavor, and the egg whites give it a smooth texture that reflects its depth. The orange garnish and maple wood smoke bubble finishes off the process of crafting such a drink that parallels his artistic journey, requiring careful selection of ingredients, balance, and creativity. A thoughtfully composed cocktail can spark connection. Much like Zuniga's work invites dialogue about identity and experience, by offering a drink that is rich and nuanced as his art, we honor his creative spirit and the narratives he weaves, creating a sensory experience that enhances appreciation for both the cocktail and the artist behind it. Hi, this is Donalyn Patakos, and welcome to Portray Presents. Tonight we have Jose Zuniga with us at the bar, and I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So I really wanted to just sort of unpack a lot of things with you. We tend to have really interesting conversations, and I'm excited for people to hear what you have to say. You're an extremely deep thinker, and I love how you translate that into your work. Just to look at one of your paintings and then to have you describe it is like nothing I've ever experienced, and I've been around a lot of artists, but you always pleasantly surprise me with what it is and the depth in which you paint. And your ability to translate that on the canvas is really palpable. So I'm excited. So I wanted to talk to you, kind of give everyone some background on you, where you came from, how you got into the art world, and up to where we are now. So you were born in California.
Yeah, I was born in Ventura, California, but I lived most of my time in Oxnard. Ventura is like a sister city to Oxnard. Mm-hmm. And it was there where I really beat all my foundations, and one of the most important times of my life was there. I think when I was maybe 7 or 8, I was outside, and then there was a man out there working in his car. He had like tattoos on him. And then we took a break, and he brought out a sketch pad. And that sketch pad, it was a lowrider. He was drawing. And then he was telling me all the tools, how he made this lowrider with like, I was really impressed with the way he drew the tires. He used like nickels and quarters. And, you know, this person, you know, thinking back, probably did some time, but he was so good. And I was like, wow, like, that was my introduction to like lowrider art and like Chicano, like prison art most specifically. Chicano art is done differently, but
right.
So I started to really look at like the magazines. It was showing me was, you know, pinups, but also like, because there was like, you know, lowriders cars, there's, you know, you draw exotic bodies on there, but also in the lowrider art magazines where people would draw and make like collages and submit it. So I never got accepted to any of them because I wasn't that good at the time. But like something awoke in me. And then so from there, I just went and started drawing and drawing and drawing. Yeah.
Amazing. And then, you know, when did you kind of say to yourself, this is something that I want to do?
Well, I wasn't really good at doing manual labor and things like that. I was not that very. I had a learning disability, or if that's what they call it, right? Math and science. So during high school, my high school art teacher really changed me and really took me away from the crowd and be like, no, come here. This is where you belong. Let's focus. Let's focus your skill here.
Wow.
And yeah, it was very, very life changing. And then he put me into community college. He signed up with me.
Really?
And introduced me to like the other Ventura art community there.
Huh. I always call these people like your angels, right?
He's an angel.
Like a living
yeah.
angel.
Yeah.
They just come at the right time in the right place and guide you. And that's amazing that he did that through education. Because
and then when I was at Ventura, there was another man who came. He was like, I don't know, 5'7", short guy. His name is George Yepes. And this guy was the person who made me fall in love with paint. I literally, it's exactly like a song. Like I saw it, I got starstruck days. I didn't know if I was alive or dead, but I was like, this is what I want to do. I went home and whatever I can grab information on Yepes' paintings, I started copying everything. And he knew so much about mythology and Velasquez, and he would paint everything with the fan brush and his method. I was like, I was upset, I was possessed.
Wow.
And I learned so much about art history, and because he was already, whatever he learned from studying Velasquez, Greek art, whatever, it was in the canvas, and I just had to copy it and internalize it in myself, you know. And that really caught me up to speed, I think, with painting, because I started with painting maybe when I was like 19 or 20. Before that, I didn't like painting. I was just drawing, and I was really good. Photorealistic drawing, I was excellent.
Right.
Then it's like I divorced it. I was like, honey, it's just not right.
It's me, it's not you.
It's me, it's not you. I found this thing called paint. And it's fluid. It gives me room to make mistakes.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And when you were living there, you were saying that like the neighborhood that you grew up in wasn't the best neighborhood.
It was a rough neighborhood. Thinking back, I thought of myself, well, maybe they thought of me like an honorary member of something, because there was just some things that nobody should see that I experienced, but I just saw it because they were nice to me. I got to see another side of them.
Right.
And so I would be in the back in the garage and that was my studio, and that's where I live. And then random people would just show up, and then they'll just hang out and do drugs and party and whatever. And I'll just be there, and they'll just join in, and and it was just like that for me. To me, that was just normal, But and then it felt kind of nice because I felt protected, but also there was some consequences, I think, too, because you're somehow guilty by association when people don't know the truth of things. So, and so especially when you're young, I think you just want to fit in, and so, but they stood up for me, and I made drawings for them. I made them like their old English letters of their ex-girlfriends or moms.
You didn't do any tattoos?
They're like, they used to call me Picasso. They're like, hey, Picasso. They're like, would you come over here, do me a tattoo? And I was like, that's not who I am.
Right.
Like, I'm a fine artist. You know what I mean?
So we were talking about when you were growing up, and I think it's really interesting when you grow up in a pretty rough neighborhood. How did you kind of navigate that? I mean, how did that work out for you, like being in the neighborhood? Do you agree with that?
It's rough. I mean, over time, I think you just learn the mannerisms. You kind of have a choice. You kind of have to blend in. But for me, art was a way to sort of, people liked it, like the friends who became troublemakers and became other things, and other people just would always look for me. They would ask me to draw like a portrait write their girlfriend's name in Old English or in cursive. That was like a very important skill to learn, cursive in Old English. You know, they tried to get me to do like tattoos. It wasn't that very good, but also just being in that environment was a big lesson for me, because I got to see their human side. They weren't just like hoodlums or taggers, drug dealers. You know, I got to see kindness out of them.
Yeah.
And so that to this day, I think about them. I think about that place. I think about the studio garage that I was living in the back and the activities that went on there, but also I think about how the protection I would get from them. But I also think about the trouble I got into because of guilty by association.
Yeah.
So it wasn't no straight line. You know what I'm saying? It was 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back all the time.
Bobbing and weaving your way through.
Bobbing and weaving through. And it was a jungle, but there was order. It was beautiful. I got to meet a lot of great people, and you know, like, but my art professors from high school kind of took me out, started to mentor me, and you know,
Got you into college.
Got me into college. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And once you got out of community college, what happened after that?
Well, my life changed because I didn't know the art world. I didn't know the art culture. I didn't know, you know, I was so caught up in my own neighborhood, in my own Chicano culture, Mexican American identity. When I went to art school in Los Angeles at Otis, and it's just trying to make friends and fit in. I didn't know what kale was. What is kale? I ate lechuga and repollo, and it wasn't fancy. It was just, you know, the roll, right? Iceberg lettuce. And so it was a big culture shock.
Dressing.
Yeah. And it was a big culture shock to me in terms of the way people spoke, their inflections, their mannerisms, their attitudes. So I learned that I was, you know, thinking back, I was always at advantage and disadvantage. I was at an advantage in a sense that I got also growing up in Oxnard, I got to meet some other mentors that introduced me to great knowledge about philosophy, Plato, Nietzsche, Noam Chomsky, Pablo Freire, all these great thinkers. You know, I had already absorbed it in my head, which I did not know what they were saying, but I was very familiar. And so when I got to that level of art school, I feel like I was already in the postmodern field in terms of like introduction, and that was barely being taught. So I felt proud of that. But in terms of the other part, art school was challenging because, and I'm saying this out of like I'm trying to be as honest as possible. You know, I felt really lonely. I didn't know, it was important for me to see peers like me teaching and facilitating just giving me the wisdom, you know. I really wanted at the time to meet artists who were proud of their heritage, but also were great artists in general. I didn't have it, and I think it made me really bitter. It made me a person I didn't want to be. I started to internalize hate against myself. I started to look down on people because I thought I was better, because I thought I was like, oh, I know conceptual art, you don't, kind of a deal. You know, it's like, it's all this pettiness. It was all petty at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's also part of your evolution as a person.
Right.
But another really important thing that I've noticed about you is that you have a hunger for knowledge. You have a hunger for knowing. And you're talking to me about how you would hear these things, but you didn't know you understood it, but you did, you know. And
Right.
that's, if you know, when Socrates talked about the knowing, right? So it's, you know, this is the number 5. How many fingers do you have?
5.
Yeah. But how do you know it's 5?
I can touch and count them.
It's a knowing. Right? You just know you do. It's a fact.
Right.
Right? And that sort of absorption, I think, was really laid the groundwork for a lot of the work that you do and you put on the canvas and still continue to read. You're telling me about this really neat book that you're reading right now, which sounds pretty interesting I'd like to talk to you about.
Sure. Yeah. It's not a great title. It's called The Rape of Mine, by, I had trouble, Jos Merleau. He's a psychoanalyst. Merleau?
Just Merleau.
Just Merleau.
Cool
He was
figure.
a psychoanalyst and a Holocaust survivor. And through his book, he talks about all of the types of menticide, brainwashing, and propaganda. And each one is quite uniquely different. Their interplay, and his testimonies and experiences are through the Holocaust, through the Cold War, and studying prisoners of war in these cases. So that's very interesting to me because I always liked psychology. When I was younger, I wanted to be a basketball player. That didn't happen. And I want to be an astronaut, and I don't like roller coasters. And then I wanted to be a psychologist, but I don't want to deal with people.
Like I'm dealing with myself here.
I'm dealing with myself right here.
Let's get on with this.
And so I started. Psychology was always like a side thing. And thinking back in that studio garage, growing up in Oxnard, there was this book I was introduced. Propaganda by Edward Bernays. At that time, maybe I was like 23. I had no idea what he was saying, but I knew something inside of me was saying, pay attention to this because this is very important. And so going back to this book, it's really helping me understand a language for the work that I'm making now and maybe made in the past, but also especially when trying to make work about the inside and the mind and consciousness, it's been very important.
You said something, really interesting to me when you said menticide, right? You've got genocide, you've got menticide.
Yeah.
I really want to elaborate on that a little bit because I don't think that people know what that is or even talk about it.
Menticide, if you Google it, it will say psychological manipulation and judicial corruption. That's menticide right there. So it's very different from the brainwashing and the propaganda because I think menticide, there's those two, but then it feels real because of the law gets involved and just makes it reality.
Yeah. Sort of that isolation thing, right? So you isolate people, you make them scared, and then you're able to manipulate their thoughts over time. Now, menticide, just tell me a little bit more about it. Is it something that happens right away, or is it something that happens over time?
I haven't gone that far.
We'll have to pick up on that later. Because I'm very interested. I think it's a super topic.
I think so too. I think somewhere on the internet it came up, and I was like, "This is interesting."
Yeah, that's a new word.
If the universe is speaking through the cloud into Google, and I got it. I got this book, and I don't know. I guess for how this applies to me is always self-analyzing myself and thinking about the core of my work is my identity, is my Mexican heritage and American heritage, is being an artist. And to me, those things, there's a tension that happens between what inhibits me and what's the lexicon of who I am, but also how I want to be independent, be free, be rebellious, self-determined, And I think we try. I'm not gonna say we, but I think for a long time I tried to be a very one lane type of thinking. No, it has to be this because if that, then you're a hypocrite or something. But reading more of the psychology, I think I came to the understanding that deep inside of us, there's just an ocean of cognitive dissonance and chaos, and that's what's there. But then through menticide, an authoritarian comes and defines that for you.
Right.
Defines the unknown, defines the fear, and simplifies the reality. And so I think I'm not thinking about Stalin in my work or Che or these kinds of figures, whether they do appear. I'm just thinking about the authorities of my culture people, family, institutions that sort of created that unknown, that not created that unknown, but defined it for me. And then now here I am in the studio, challenging it, trying to have an agency, being self-determined, questioning, and just trying to make peace, but also just living with it. Yeah.
Yeah. You talk a lot about your judges.
Right. Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about your judges.
The judges for me are, like I said, there are these symbolic figures. They take shapes in my forms as characters and symbols, and for me they remind me of like people, again, these institutions, heads of family, cultural figures, and I'm not interested in painting them real. I'm interested in making them feel real to me. That's what's important. Because I'm very interested in that feeling of reality with that. Yeah.
Where does the healing come in?
Healing when you die. I don't know.
I mean, usually you make a painting and
Right.
you get the message, or you've given the message. Like, is there a healing in that process for you, or is it just more questions?
I think it just happens when you stop fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You just like, you know what? You make a peace with it, and you just kind of like, I don't have the energy to gaslight myself or gaslight anybody or anything or pick a fight. It's just sort of like you stop seeing, you let that perception take over your mind, right? Because you also have to, at least for me and my work, I question, well, where did that thought come from?
Right.
Yeah. How did that become incepted in me?
And then, do I want to feed that
Do
thought?
I want to feed into that aggression,
Yeah.
right? Or do I want to feed into these things? You know, and I think peace has been the most difficult. I don't know about healing, but peace, because it could be very uncomfortable. Because a lot of us, I think, including myself, get bored when everything is still and dull and nothing's happening. I think that's it. You know, there's nothing else beside that, but I just choose to want to know the war sometimes. And I'm like, no.
Sometimes the peace is important, though. Like, even just a pause.
Right.
Like,
you breathe.
yeah, I remember one of my favorite sayings. It's like, if you feel like you're in a tug of war, you could put the rope down.
Yeah.
Right? You put the rope down. So mentally, sometimes you have to put the rope down, because you could just get completely wound up and you're huffing and puffing and you're struggling with this thing that probably doesn't even exist on the other end of the rope, which is just, your monsters or your fears. And fear could be such a huge catalyst in everything that we do. So how do we remove this fear?
Speaking of judges, that old saying, fear is your only God, right? And even I think maybe some singers or iconic figures have said that they would like to be fearless. Imagine what we can do, right? And I think fear is also a form of like menticide, right? It's like, again, of defining the unknown for somebody and creating pictures. I know that because I grew up Catholic. So, there's unknown is hell, and then Mexican hell. Let me tell you, Mexican Catholic hell is not. It's like waking up and you're like participating in the cell with Jennifer Lopez. You're laying down, and then there's a demon taking out your umbilical cord, and just little by little. I mean, I grew up with stories of hell. I grew up with more stories of hell than heaven.
It's true. It sort of keeps everybody in check, right?
Right.
But it also at some point can become very intriguing.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
Yeah.
But it does happen if you feed that animal all the time. So amazing. So I want to talk about college, right? So you graduated from community college, and then how'd you make your way over to Columbia?
So when I was at Otis, working at my BFA, I had no skill, like I said. I lived sometimes in my car, because the school, where I was living was in the valley. So Otis was like by Inglewood, and I lived in Northridge. I was commuting, and so I would sometimes live in the car because I would want to be in my studio. I was possessed.
Wow.
But then I would go back to the house, and then In the beginning, I made my way into a room. I was like couch surfing it there. It was like a frat house. So it was difficult. It was fun. Like I said, it was another experience there. Like I was this honorary member of this secret club again. Here it's like same story, different setting. It was a frat house, and then I would come and there'll be parties, beer everywhere, and then I'll become all tired, 4 in the morning. I was like, just join them. I'll sleep another time. And then so when I would go there and then sleep there, and then I eventually got a room. But during the last years of my senior year at Otis, I mostly lived in my studio, which you're not supposed to, and in the car. And then I would just drive back to Northridge, take a shower, drive back, paint, because I had something to prove to myself. I set this ridiculously standard. And it's true. I heard this somewhere. If you got a dream, you got to dream ridiculous. My dream was like, somebody put this idea, you should go to Columbia. I don't know who it was. Not the country. Columbia University. Okay. And they're like, you should go there. And I was like, you're right, I should. I didn't know why. Wow. All I knew was like, I didn't like the scene in LA. I didn't like the way people were telling me to perceive myself as an artist who was Mexican and American. There wasn't really a place for me at that time or for the type of work that I wanted to make.
Sure.
So I gave it everything I had in that studio. I used my experiences that I did before becoming an artist. I used to be those very, very quickly. Long story short, I did a lot of community service. I volunteered in a lot of civic duties, shelters, helping the elderly. So this is why I had bad grades. I was more interested in being out there than being in school, and that was the reason. I believe I got, besides being a good artist, I think they found me as an interesting candidate, I think, because I had experience. I had real projects. I had community achievements. I never had the grades. In high school, I was like always I was a 2.6 student.
You had the tenacity, though.
I had something else. Something else was going. Something in the system wasn't working for me. And it wasn't for me. I also saw it with a lot of people too. To this day, they're actually achieving even more than the valedictorians, probably. So that experience at that moment, I called them mentors. I need letters. Now's the time. This is where it matters, right?
Sure.
And then they came through for me, and I got in. Everybody was shocked. I was shocked. I didn't know it was like I got in. They let this guy in. Yeah. But that was another beast to maneuver, because once I got in, everybody was so prepared, and I didn't have a certain type of upbringing, I think, and it made me feel again insecure about myself. But before I got in, like, let me just say, like, I worked very, very hard. I worked tirelessly. Everybody was telling me don't do it. Everybody was telling you should wait 5 years. I said hell no with you guys, because I had no skill. I worked in construction. I was a dishwasher. I volunteered. I picked up garbage. I got in. I got in, you know what I'm saying? And I never forget that. That's the advice I tell people, young people, is like, be accomplished. It's nice to have good grades, but be an accomplished person.
It's true, because sometimes, you think about people that get really good grades in school. They're straight A students and they want to become something. But once you're out into the world, you have to deal with other people for the most part. How are you going to build a good law practice if nobody likes you?
Right.
Or become a good doctor if you're a jerk? If you just know, but you have no social skills at all. I think social skills in the big picture of life is so much more important than, remembering how to do that algebraic equation, let's say. Not saying it's not important, but the fine art of speaking to people, right? The interpersonal relationships that you can build is so important.
It's very important, and attitude is key, man. So key. And you know, so what I guess I'm trying to say with that is that because I had no art skills, I had no studio skills, I had no proper training, I didn't know how to build a box, I didn't know how to do all these things. All I knew is I'm good at this brush, making it, and I had all this great history. So it was, for me, it was do or die. It was this or go back in California Pizza Kitchen and, you know, wash dishes for Harrison Ford if he comes in or not. You know?
Right, you weren't going to do that.
I got in, I was so lucky. I was shocked. My life was changing. I had no idea what I got into. And when I got there, you know, there was like people from Oxford and Harvard and the son of Hootie Woo and Whoopty Wah. And I was like, I'm from Oxnard. You heard of it? We make strawberries. You might have eaten some. You know, like, I don't know. Like, and so I couldn't relate the language that they were using. I understood it because I've read some of the text, but I put it into my own personal life. I'm like, oh yeah, I know somebody who's authoritarian. There's this guy that I knew who did some time, and he got into by doing this. But it was, so it's like.
But when you do it, it's legal.
But when you do it, it's legal. So it's like, but thinking about that and these characters is exactly how I think I'm thinking about my work. It's like, I know a guy who's like Che Guevara or something. Oh, I knew a guy who was like this.
Yeah.
And their likeness or whatever is imprinted, their impression is in my mind. And that just becomes symbolic for me.
Wow.
It's like, this thing is that. I'm not interested in the actual totalitarian figure. I'm just interested in how, I guess, in psychology, right? Like these personalities, when they become magnified and politicized, then you have a totalitarian.
Yeah. And it happens while you're sleeping.
And it happens while you're sleeping.
And you're not paying attention. You know, we talk about how there's a socioeconomic problem, right, in this country. And I think what's really neat is you've experienced both sides of that coin. You know,
Yes.
Coming from where you came from and then going to an Ivy League school must have been, I mean,
it's the American story.
It's the American dream.
It's the American dream.
It really is.
Yeah, I think for a long time I shied away from it, but I realized I just need to accept that's just who I am. And one of the reasons why I shied away from it, because it became a cliche, like in the movies. Here's the brown person from the hood and goes to the Ivy League, and now he changes his name from Jose to Joseph, Zuniga to Washington. You know, so it's like so I don't know if that happens here in Miami, but where I come from, it was important to have a change, but also it was very damaging, I think. You know.
But you kind of turned that around too, because you became a teacher.
I did.
At Columbia.
I did. Yeah.
And I mean, that's just a little known fact, but
yeah,
you know, let me brag for you.
It was right after school. I was hired. Professor walks in. I mean, he already knew. I've worked with this person for a long time. He was one of the best mentors and professors that I could have stumbled. Gregory Amanoff, and I feel like he really understood where I was coming from, and so he and I also got to TA for him, so he knew that, oh, you've worked with personalities. I did. I've worked with lots. I've worked with great personalities, mediocre personalities, and bad personalities.
Scary personalities.
And scary personalities.
Yeah.
So, you know, being a good listener is a great survival skill, right?
I'd say.
You know?
Remembering you have two ears and one mouth in
Right.
certain situations probably saved your life a couple of times.
And
drawings.
And drawings.
Old English.
Yeah, Old English and cursive, yeah.
Yeah.
And so teaching there was also very interesting because it was, you know, being cultured in an Ivy League is very different from coming out of the herd and into this top echelon.
Right.
Where they look at you like, wow, you're a graduate student. It's like, yeah, hi. But it's like, you made it here because you were a 4.0. I mean, sometimes I'll rub it in their face just to tease them. They're like, yeah, you know, I'll be like, oh, I got this grade.
Yeah, but you certainly didn't get there by accident.
I didn't.
By any means.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that life experience is
that
just
life
as
experience,
important.
I owed it to the elders that I've met, and
Yeah.
I listened. I allowed myself to be taught, there's a lot of great artists out there, but sometimes, some horses don't want to learn.
Yeah. I also feel, listening to what you're saying to me, you have a very keen way of listening to that voice in your head, right? That says danger or go for that. And it seems to be really loud in your head.
Yes.
And I don't know if you call that divine intervention. I don't know. It's just a phenomenon to me. But certain people have the ability to sense what they're supposed to be doing at the right time when they're supposed to be doing it. And I never know if it's just something that we can't explain, helping us along the way if we pay attention to it. And you seem to have a very keen way of focusing your way into paying attention to put yourself in the right situations.
I think
over and over.
Learning to swallow pride is very important.
Yeah.
And can get you, and then also learning when to let go of it, better judgment. But all this, I think, comes with just wisdom.
Yeah.
I think that's a very key that they don't teach in schools is wisdom. Like when I was, 22, 24, I was fit, I was Plato, Nietzsche, I was reading, I was working out, but I had no guidance. You know what I mean? It's like, if you let me borrow your Ferrari, if you had a Ferrari, just give me the keys, go. And not understanding, you gotta be mindful of the person in front of you. You gotta be mindful of the person behind you. You just can't drive like that. Like, who do you think, like all these things of caution, right? Because you can hurt yourself. Knowledge is power, but power will destroy you.
Yeah.
Right. And you need the life experience. And I'm thinking about all these things and revisiting all this information and revisiting all these places through memory and just trying to maybe, I don't know, get a different insight through wisdom, because I feel like that's something I didn't have in school. I had multiple father figures, like I grew up, I didn't have my parents all the time. I grew up most of the time by myself or with my brother.
Right.
And his in-laws. But I think, I had to absorb and I had to listen to other people's advice and learn and watch them make mistakes. And, it's like, sometimes it's not about who gets there first. It's about studying how that person got there, or it's about studying how, well, this person did that, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like,
sometimes it's a good example.
And so,
What not to do.
so thinking back to this place in Oxnard, watching people make mistakes, I was never the bravest, I'll tell you that. There were some real hard people that I came across and was in awe, but I knew it's like, if there was a gunshot, you run the other way. You don't run towards the gunshot.
Right.
These guys ran towards the gunshot. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was like, well, good to know. There's a point
over here.
There's a point where courage becomes stupidity.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that goes towards anything.
Don't you think a lot of that has to do with ego? A lot of it has
Insecurity
to do
too.
Like, yeah, but it's like, I'm going to be the person who's going to be there first and fight and whatever. It's like,
there's
it's all about
definitely
that person.
The hero complex within, I think, most men, or maybe women too.
Women too, sure. Yeah. Women get that complex, and people say, they're very strong because when they have to deal with things, they do. Right? They'll do anything for their families. They'll do anything to survive. If something is lacking, the women have very quick to pick it up. But, usually it's the male that does these sorts of things.
Monkey see, monkey do. That's what we are, right? Just you don't really think too much about it.
Exactly. So, you just had a show at Central Fine. It was amazing. And, looking at the works, there was one in particular. I want to ask you something. I think I may have asked you this before in the past, but there are certain themes over and over in your art, like the teeth. What do the teeth symbolize? Because they're in so many of your paintings.
The teeth started unearthed during Otis, and I was really trying to. At the time, I couldn't. If you were to ask me, can you be friends with the younger self, I probably couldn't get along with this person, who I am now. But I was all about trying to. I thought of myself as a coyote, somebody who's bringing in vernacular culture into high art, right? And so I was really about what are the hip hop appearances, what are the signifiers of the ghetto, places like this, and how do we dress. So there I started to use appearances to make abstraction, because I thought I was obsessed with identity and abstraction, and the interplay between those things. And so I would make these paintings, hard edge paintings, with the type of haircut that I would get at the time. I used to get like a one fade and a very sharp lineup. And so that line right here became the form, the negative and positive space. It became this thing, this conversation between negative and positive. It was very interesting. Then I started to add like golden teeth, you know, because I would see growing up like my favorite rappers, David Banner, Paul Wall, Tupac, you know, the bling was very part of hip hop, you know, and so I wanted to bring that into it to add a level, not just of simplification, but also this tension of maximalism or just association, you know, because I also didn't want the work to look just like a hard edge painting. Yeah, you know, like I wanted to give it a piece of my influence or my background, right? Right. So it started from there, and there were gold teeth. And so I sort of made these paintings where they looked like they were a face, but the teeth was a marker of that. Right. And so from there, I think the mouth came and became this psychological thing of speech, of now judges, of maybe consumption. It just became this very ambitious form that shows up in my work. And I think it really, you know, adds a lot of interesting things.
It does. It's like uniquely you, right? Yeah. Sometimes they're on the ground. Sometimes they're in the middle of the painting. You know, you have one now that you just made. It's just an amazing snake. Right. Tell me about that painting.
There's the snake, and there's like all this dust, and there's these teeth coming out, and there's like a cactus, and there's ants. There's a hand, the lasso. There's a sheriff hat. All those things that to me, I think, live somewhere inside of my psyche, and I think, and that painting, I had to be called internalizing, because, you know, when you grow up in a Catholic home, like, the signifiers of evil are quite simple. Reptiles and dragons, and, you know, these things are symbolic for the other and the unknown, or the things you don't understand. And so the snake becomes that in the work, you know, bringing back that language that we already know, because I think fear is a common language that we all understand, or visually too. So I wanted to bring that in, and there are moments where I do get detail, and there are moments where it kind of disappears. Yeah. It becomes a line, right? And that's I think that's part of like a thing, like a train of thought. You know, we don't really know exactly the picture, but we see traces of it, parts where we emphasize and parts where they break up. And to me, that work is about how I catch myself, and to this day I'm working on it, internalizing people's aggression, or an authoritarian perspective of myself, my culture, who I am. It doesn't even matter on the politics or anything. It's just a matter of, it's just pure hate, how I constantly, there's a voice that says, no, or you're not good enough, or like, maybe you should try another profession. That sort of auto-hypnosis in there, that's all constant wrestle. You know, it's so abstract. And I think if you have it, if you're conscious of, which I hope we are, you know, I think it's very uniquely different to everybody. So to me, this is the way I only know how to express it, through symbols. There's no other way.
Yeah. And it's, you know, really important work. You know, you have one where in the same series of work, but you wouldn't even guess it was in the same body of work, right? With the judge himself, it looks like, when he's sort of hammering his fist down and looking at you, judging you. Yeah. And you have the flag behind with the 5-point stars in them, not so perfect, right? That to me is also a very powerful piece in the series. Right. I mean, I think the entire thing, even the way the larger bodies of work that you had in the big room, how you have these people with the wigs on, right? The judges themselves. And they have like pens in their hands. And like with the stroke of a pen, they could put you in jail. And you feel that. and you feel the heaviness of these people that weigh on your own mind, right?
And I think that right there is kind of becomes a metaphor when we put too much happiness. We give our happiness into people's hands, right? When we surrender ourselves to people and we're so dependent on them to make these choices, we don't realize that things can turn one day.
Yeah.
It never comes to us because, as in, psychologically, we always think, well, I'm not going to be the homeless guy. I have a dream. I have a purpose. I went to Colombia. It has to work out.
Right.
So we get into this naive thinking that it's not going to happen, but it's like, it does. I heard this parable about a magician who lives in a forest and is he has some sheep that he's farming, and so he gets a magician. No, he's also a magician, and he hypnotizes the sheep because they're all running, and they're all running and being eaten by coyotes. So, but he also has this whole thing going on with the sheep. So he's slaughtering them.
Right.
So he starts telling the sheep, "You're a lawyer. You're an artist. You're important. You're this, you're that." And every time a sheep disappears, they're like, "Well, that's not gonna happen to me. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm this and I am that." I think that happens to people. Like, at least to me, sometimes I'm at the red light and I'm like, I fall into it. It's like, what did that person do to end up here?
Yeah.
I'm like,
you do. When they go by your car and they have these signs and you say, "Ooh, that could be any of us."
Yeah.
And some of them hit you a little bit different than others, right? It depends on the day, but I get you.
Mental fortitude is something that is very important, and I think
Purpose. We were talking about purpose.
Purpose,
right?
yeah.
If you don't have a purpose, you get
Right.
depressed.
You get depressed,
You get
and
lost.
It goes down, it goes lower.
Sometimes you turn to drugs or alcohol, and by the time you're 35, you've been in rehab. It's tough. We were talking about something interesting earlier, you and I, about you're at a point in your life where you look back at the people that you grew up with, right? And how you really don't feel like you have much in common anymore, right?
Yeah. Well, you feel like that, but there's still something that bonds you together. And then I think, at least for me, is always trying to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
We're not monoliths. We're like clay people, which we're always changing. Life is
Very
happening.
adaptable. So on that note, it makes me think about the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a psychiatrist that had gone into a concentration camp. And he lived there, and people there knew he was a doctor, right? But what he did was he observed people as he watched very healthy people get very sick and die. And then other people would go through hell and excel, right? And we all know those types of people. You seem to be one of those types of people. Just keep going. What does that saying goes? If you're going through hell, just keep going, right? Yeah. And I think the biggest takeaway I got from that book was how adaptable human beings really are, how we can do things no one ever thought that you could. Like he said in his book, like people say that if you don't eat for a week, you die. He said, that's not true.
That's not true.
I witnessed that. Yeah. If we were lucky to get a potato a week, we were happy. So you can be in these awful circumstances and adapt. So when we're young and we're with our friends and we're going through these growing pains and these experiences that we have, I think those are the things that bind us. Mm-hmm. But when you change your environment, your attitude changes too. Mm-hmm. Which is why it's really important to have purpose, right?
Absolutely. And on top of that, I think I agree with you 100%, but also not forgetting where you come from.
Yeah.
That's, practicing that memory of where you come from, or at least for me, what my parents came from, what they did to get here, and having a kind of responsibility. Like I am not a part of that struggle, but I can maybe add a different chapter to it. Yeah. It doesn't have to be self-deprecating, or I don't need a soft story. I may go out and make my own, but to know that my parents are capable of having that tenacity, like I can do it.
Yeah.
They do it, I can do it.
I think also a big part of that is feeling grateful.
Absolutely.
You know, I
Right.
think if you're feeling grateful, you can't really get the poor meats,
You got to call the victories.
right?
Yeah.
And you kind of look for the good if that's the case, because you're not feeling bad for yourself or other people. And I'm a big believer in manifestation. I don't know if you are.
Working on it.
Yeah, it's fucking great. Like, I don't know, like I always tell people my brain controls the universe, and I really believe it. You know, after a while you see these coincidences that happen, or you have these thoughts, or you write something. If you write something down, it's the best.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the other day we were sitting down at the table and we were talking about this conference that we were at. And this one group in particular, how we had met them and how I thought it was an interesting program. And the phone rang and it was them. In that moment, they called. And I was like, see, my brain controls the other. But, you know, I love believing that, at least, because I really feel like it's taken me very far in life. You know, if you could picture yourself in a scenario and try to be as specific as you possibly can, you'd be amazed at how far you can go. And, you know, you learn things like that from Zig Ziglar and like all these amazing people. You were talking about Zig. What were you saying?
Boy, he has that expression, you can't blame the snowflake for the blizzard.
Right.
And I think when I heard that expression, I thought about my younger self. I was so mad at all these storms and all these great human things that are tragic, but also it's like, I gotta be realistic. I gotta change myself.
Yeah.
I think that's where the word, I'm not a religious person, but I think that's where the word revelation comes through here.
Yeah.
Revelation, very similar, right? It comes from the inside and you change the person next to you. We got to change yourself first.
Yeah.
You can't, you know, and I think that's what, I don't know what this work is leading me to be in the future, but there is some sort of hierarchical of needs that I'm working out through my own painting. Mm-hmm. But also I think maybe I want to be just a better adult or a better version of myself, who feels like they're making their own decisions.
Yeah.
And feels like they're carving their own path through their own decisioning. And then if something falls, if something bad happens, that's not the blizzard's fault. It's my fault.
It's called accountability.
Accountability,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think when you can get to a point where you're honest with yourself, that a lot of the situations that you get into are because of the choices you made, right?
And I think as a young person, I didn't have that because I was always looking for, I think, a reason to be like, well, my life is messed up because of this, because of that, or because of this person. I wait, and then there's envy in that too, you know, and that's to bring it home and live with it it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also cathartic in a way. Like the minute that you can say, you know, that was really my fault because of this, and not to shame yourself, you know, or become some sort of martyr. No, that's not the point. The point is to say, you know what, I'm really sorry that I was a part of that. I was part of that decision.
Yeah.
And people tend to really respect that.
Right.
You know, it took me a while to learn that as an adult too, because
you have to approach them. You can't do it through social media.
Right? I don't know. It's like you never want to let people down. You know, you want them to think well of you, but you know what? Sometimes thinking something really good about someone is realizing that they're humble enough to admit when they're wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So I like that. It's sort of a lesson that I've learned along the way too.
And part of that awareness, like for me, it comes to the practice of painting.
Yeah.
Always revisiting that envy, those emotions, the oppression, the oppressor, all myself, my trauma, domestic abuse, whatever it is. Like revisiting, and just having not just peace, but just be like, that's who I am.
Yeah. And thank God for it.
All these broken parts. Yeah. And it's like, but without it, it's like, would I probably be a painter? Probably not. No. I don't know.
Would you have empathy? Probably not, right?
You know, so yeah, I think painting in the way has given me that realization, that self-awareness a little bit. And I'm not saying I'm planning to be a Buddha or things like that. No. I don't believe, you know, I don't believe and I don't think these things or those figures like that. To me, it's just becoming a better version of yourself what is it the thing that I think as a mentor, when I used to teach or mentor at places, I would ask people, what is it that you need, that you think you need now? What is it going to take for you to get it? And what's stopping you?
Right.
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 Like,
That's a great question. And you have the ability through your art to put that out into the universe so people get to feel that energy too.
I always give them a piece of my mind.
Yeah, you
But
sure
sometimes
do.
I feel like I'm giving too much and I'm losing it, but I don't think I'm.
I don't think you would be you if you didn't do it.
Yeah.
So thank you for being you, and thank you
thank
for
you.
being here. And we drank our drink.
Thank you for the
I
drink.
hope you liked your drink.
El Viajero.
Cheers.